In this video, I will cover these topics. Number 1. The pilot's interview where he claims flights Brisbane, New York City flies over Alaska. Topic number 2. It's my conclusion that no flights whatsoever coming from Australia to North America, Canada, US and Mexico fly south of Hawaii. I'm gonna say this again. It's my conclusion that no flights whatsoever from Australia to North America, Canada, US and Mexico fly south of Hawaii. As I say, my point number 1, talking about the pilot's interview and his claim that flights from Brisbane to New York City flies over Alaska. This is from Google Maps, right? You see here Mexico, you see US and Canada. Now let's look at this guy's video and see the path of the flight Brisbane to New York. So I watched this guy's video and I was going through it, and he used 3 different apps to explain his route from Brisbane to New York City. No middle point like where to refuel the aircraft, because no aircraft goes all the way from Brisbane to New York 20 hours flight without stopping for refueling. There is no clear path like where they would land. So I was exploring a little bit just in case there was like an emergency stop. And this is his path again, south of LA, very important, San Diego, right? Because this is important when I make my point. Here's again another app, another flight plan. And I quote that because one more time, it's just a straight line on a ball. No path like where to stop for refueling. No aircraft can fly 20 hours straight. He had to stop where? We don't know. Honolulu, Hawaii. This is not approved for the globe because there are plenty of flights coming from Sydney to Hawaii by Hawaiian Airlines. And once you are in Hawaii, this is a domestic flight. So let me find the point here that I found really interesting. This is another app, the same thing. He goes over and he talks about this flight plan south of Hawaii to New York, okay, north of Mexico. Now this is where things got really interesting. All this wind stuff is easily explained on the Flat Earth map. Unfortunately, they removed the AE map out of New School website. Okay, this is it right here. See those 2 dots here? This one here is Mexico City. This one is Dallas, and we have Houston right here in between. Houston is right here, right? So I was wondering why, okay, what if we had, because of this bad weather, wind, what if we had to divert these flights to Mexico City? Now this is where things really got interesting. I tried to find a straight flight from Sydney to Mexico City. Guess what? You can't find any. The flights from Mexico to Sydney or flights from Sydney to Mexico has to stop in Houston, right here. And this is really weird. So I Googled something else, and let me show you what I found out. You see, guys, the distance between Sydney and Mexico City, it's only 8,056 miles, whereas the distance from Sydney to Houston is 8,581 miles. Flying at 560 miles per hour, they cover these flights in 15 hours 35 minutes. But once you try to find a flight from Sydney to Mexico, it takes you 19 hours and 25 minutes. And the funny thing is, you don't find a direct flight. Okay, even though a flight from Sydney to Houston flies over Mexico City. This is really weird. So you have to go from Sydney to Houston and then come down to Mexico City. But a flight from Sydney to Houston is only 15 hours. but to Mexico City is 19 hours. So what's wrong with this picture? It's simple. They're flying over a flat Earth. And that's what I'm going to show you next. See, on the globe, they have to shrink the distance in the southern hemisphere. That's why if you Google the distance between Sydney and Mexico City, it shows only 8,056 miles, because they bring it together to fit the globe theory. But Gleason, back in his book, he already pointed this out in the 1800s. If you Google the distance, for example, between Cape of Good Hope, South Africa, to Cape Horn in South America, Google will give you the distance of 4,000 miles. But in reality, this distance is 5,500 miles. And Gleason pointed that out right here. Back in his days, the distance in theory was computed as 3,420 miles between the two capes, when in real life it was 5,700 miles. How did he know that? Because what made Flat Earth big in the 1800s was the account from the mariners and captains saying that on the globe they should make this trip in 8 days, when they were taking 12 to 14 days to complete this trip, on the seas. The people in Europe was, especially the owners of those ships, were forcing them to complete this trip in 8 days. So, they could profit and make like 3-4 trips a month. But the captains and the marines were saying, well, but it's taking us 13 days to do it. We can only do this trip twice a month, And that's the whole thing started. The real distance between Cape of Good Hope to Cape Horn is 5,700 miles. Not what Google gives you. This is what it's happening here. Google gives you the distance between Mexico City to Sydney, 8,000 miles, when it's way longer than that. That's why they fly the way they fly on the flat Earth, which I'm going to show you right now. Here you go, folks. This is what they're doing. They're flying Sydney to Houston, from Houston down to Mexico City. Takes 15 hours from Sydney to Houston. If they could fly a straight flight from Sydney to Mexico, it would take 19 hours. That's why what they calculated on the right here, Sydney to Mexico City, 19 hours, 25 minutes. It's because they're really looking at this here. Sydney, Mexico City. You cannot find any a straight flight, direct flight from Sydney to Mexico City. They either stop Los Angeles to Mexico, or they stop in Houston to Mexico City, or they stop San Francisco, Mexico City. You will find a Canadian Airlines. They fly Australia, Brisbane, Vancouver, Mexico City. That's it. Nothing flies south of Hawaii coming from Australia towards North America. That includes Vancouver, Houston, and Mexico City. And Steve had a point when he said flights from Sydney or Brisbane, flights coming from Brisbane to New York has to fly over Alaska. And the guys can show you computers, animation, screenshots, things made digitally, but those things are not real. They can't be, because the Earth is not a ball. So you fly over Mexico to Houston and then back to Mexico City. It makes no sense. This is it, guys. There is no other way. And we were going to look at one by one, and you're going to see that these flights all fly north of Hawaii. All of them. There's no other way. No flights below go below LA, from Australia to North America, either Canada or US. These flights do not reach Mexico. If you live on a ball, it would be much easier flying from Australia south and reach Mexico first, and then Houston. Why a direct flight to Mexico City has to stop in Houston? These flights are coming from the north of Hawaii. This is the path. It goes straight from Sydney to Houston, and from Houston to Mexico City. That's it. That's the key. There are no flights, and I say again, there are no flights coming from Australia flying south of Hawaii. Now let's look at these flights one by one. Try to book a flight, for example. Let's go to the website now. I'll show you. A Matrix Airfare Search, software by Google. Departing from Sydney, Australia, destination Mexico City. Hit search. Now we will have to select all the options here. Sydney to Mexico, stops, 3 stops, LA. So let's select just one stop because they don't have a direct flight. This is my point. Sydney to Mexico, stop in LA, north of Hawaii. It's flying from the north, coming from the north, not from the south. Okay, now look at this one right here. Houston George Bush Intercontinental Airport. So this flight is coming, just as I told you. Let me show here on the Flat Earth map. This flight is coming from here. It's not flying south of Hawaii. This flight is flying coming from the north of Hawaii. That's where this flight is coming from. Straight to Houston, Mexico City. All the flights. The other one, LA, Mexico City, which is almost like a straight path. Other one, San Francisco, Mexico City. You have. But Houston, Texas. That's what I'm saying. Let's go back to the website. Houston, San Francisco, Houston, LA. Nothing is flying south of LA. Nothing flies south of LA. Nothing flies south of Hawaii. Those flights are all coming from the north. They all prove the Gleason's map is correct. Guys, open your eyes. There are no flights in reality. Now, they can show you software, they can show you a globe, they can show you a ball, they can show flight plans. In reality, those flights are not coming from the south. Nothing's flying south of Hawaii. There is nothing flying south of LA, coming from Australia. Nothing. If you try Canadians, if you try the Canadian Airlines, I'm going to show you a video. If you try any other airline, any other path, it's always this. I was going to talk about each one of them, showing each and every city, Brisbane or Melbourne. Each one of those flights, they either go to San Francisco, LA, or Houston. Why? Because they are all flying this path here. They are all flying according to the Flat Earth map. Okay, there is a flight, Sydney to Mexico City, stop in Vancouver. So in the video, the passenger is looking at the screen in front of him, while he sees this path is like an S. The flight leaves the ball, Australia on the ball, and then goes this way, and then goes around Hawaii and towards Vancouver to come back to Mexico City. The video on the side of this is showing an in-flight, a real-life video someone shot while flying from Brisbane to Vancouver and then Mexico. You can see that on the ball, the flight goes like an S and then north of Hawaii towards Brisbane. And we understand now, looking at this video, that this flight was coming from Australia to Vancouver on the Flat Earth map. You can see how this flight makes more sense. And then from Vancouver towards Mexico City. Easily explained on the Flat Earth map, makes no sense at all on the globe. I have seen flights not making sense before, but the flights from Australia to south of the United States or Mexico, it makes no sense. This flight, Sydney, Houston, Mexico City, is the giveaway. I mean, there is no way this flight is happening on the globe. There is no flights coming from south, so-called hemisphere on the globe, flying towards Houston, flying over Mexico, stopping Houston, then coming back to Mexico. There's no way, guys. The earth is flat. This is enough proof. I understand the globe believers will come up with any sort of excuse. I just want to ask you to be sincere, guys, and understand we do not live on the globe. There are no bendy waters, no rivers running uphill over the globe. No, the earth is flat. This is it. This is the reality we live in. I understand that some people will defend the software, will defend what they see in front of their screen, the digital screen on their iPads. If what is on the screen of your cell phone or iPads is true, so all these people here are true in what they are doing.
Look at this. There's a Vaporeon that spawned right there, so everyone's running.
There's a what there?
You tell me there's a Vaporeon.
That's funny.
Oh my god, I don't even know. Oh my god. Everyone's just, well.
They are all following Pokemon Go because they see on the screen of their cell phones or tablets or computers. Some of them have encountered death because they were so focused on the screen following the Pokemon Go. They were hit by cars or fell into holes or, fell into rivers, bridges and everything because they were believing what was happening on their computer screen. And still some globe believers believe on the globe because what they are seeing on their screen, they're not observing the reality. These flights are not flying south of Hawaii. All of them, no exception, flies north of Hawaii. This is the reality. All these flights are coming from Sydney or from Australia, anywhere. Anywhere you fly here, from Sydney to Los Angeles, from Sydney to Hawaii, from Sydney to Vancouver, from Sydney to San Francisco or Houston, anywhere you're coming, there's no other path. All these flights have to follow this path. So search the flights, go to websites, see where they stop, and see they can only match a flat earth map. There's no other way. They will give you excuse, no, we can't fly from no, because they can't, because that's not the way. It's not done. No flights are flying south of Hawaii. All right? This is not happening, guys. This is just a screen for the passengers to believe they are living on a ball. This is what's taking place right here. All these flights are coming from Australia, north of Hawaii. All of them. There are no flights, and I will say again, there are no flights coming from the south of Hawaii towards North America, either Canada, US, or Mexico. There are no flights. You cannot fly to Mexico or San Diego or anywhere south of LA because those flights are not coming from south of Hawaii. They all fly north of Hawaii. All of them are flying north of Hawaii. Now this black line here is Hawaiian Airlines, as I was explaining to you earlier. This flight does not prove the globe Earth because it's a straight direct flight from Sydney to Hawaii. Once this Hawaii's port of entry, once you are in Hawaii, you fly domestically towards mainland. So from here you can fly anywhere, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Houston, or New York. There is a flight, if you try to fly Sydney to New York, that's what you're gonna get, Hawaii and then New York. Because once you are in Hawaii, that's port of entry and then you are flying domestically. You can fly to any of the main cities in mainland. Now, going back to what Steve had said, that's why I understand what he was saying. There's no way for you to fly from New York to from Sydney to New York flying south of Hawaii, because that's the software. And I do, guys, want you to pay attention to this video. Very important. This will close what I'm trying to say here. Please pay attention to this video.
But here's something they won't tell you. Here's a flight tracker, and it's picked up by the Australian ATC radar. Okay, this is the Australian Arctic radar system that tracks the flights across the Pacific here. Okay? Australian ATC radar is controlled by these guys, NASA. Yeah, the same guys that brought us the fake moon landings, the fake going to Mars, and the fake ISS space station. In fact, they control all the airline routes that we see on the trackers. The times, the positions, everything. Used in airline fleet management, vortex and wake turbulence studies, Denver Airport Coherent Technologies in partnership with the FAA and who? NASA. So, who's the FAA in partnership with? NASA. In August 2005, Air Service Australian Air Services and the United National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, signed a letter of agreement to undertake collaborative research on air traffic management, decision support, automation, communication, navigation, and surveillance. So who is Australia and the FAA in partnership with? NASA. The ones that bring us all the different globe sizes, continent placements, ocean placements. That NASA. The ones that fake going to the moon, fake going to Mars, and fake live feeds on the ISS fake station. All comes from these guys here.
Okay, guys, very important information. I want you to focus on this word right here. Navigation. Navigation, navigation, navigation. Okay, navigation, that includes all the software these guys are using to flight plan. That includes all the softwares, professional or not. They all get the same information from the same source, which is NASA. So this is a very important piece of information. All these guys are planning flights with software developed or approved by NASA. Do you think that NASA will, if they are pushing the globe, faking the globe, do you think they will release a software proving a flat earth? Of course not. They are liars. They are lying. Nothing flies south of Hawaii coming from Australia towards North America. That includes Vancouver, Houston, and Mexico City. And the guys can show you computers animation, screenshots, things made digitally, but those things are not real. They can't be, because the Earth is not a ball.